Do you have favorite English singers? I may not myself sing very well. So there are many singers I admire, from Megan Trainor to Celine Dion and from Steve Perry to Justin Bieber, to name a few. One thing all of these singers have in common is that they know how to breathe properly. Because when we speak, it's not unlike when we sing. Speaking is not unlike singing. There are natural places to pause and take a breath. It is not possible to sing the whole song in one breath, and it is also not natural to say a long sentence in one breath. So in this lesson, I'm going to teach you about something called thought groups and chunking in English. And I'll explain you how to group the thoughts, how to group the words into thoughts. And if you group your words naturally, there will be better flow to your speech, and it will be easier for people to understand you, and you'll be able to read out the things properly, and you will understand the writer's work. I'm going to read the text two different ways. The first time I'm going to read with unnatural pauses. The second time I'll read with thought groups. There will be better flow to my reading. I want you to listen carefully the difference. When I was a girl, I skipped down paths, danced in my bedroom, spun in circles under the sky, jumped rope with my friends, squatted to smell flowers in my mother's garden. Now reading 2. When I was a girl, I skipped down paths, danced in my bedroom, spun a circle under the sky, jumped rope with my friends, and squatted to smell flowers in my mother's garden. One difference between speaking and writing is that in writing, we used punctuation. So when we read aloud, the writer's punctuation tells us where to pause. For example, we pause at comma, period, semicolon, and a colon. We also pause when there are parentheses. An example of oral reading. When I was a boy, I leaped over fences. When I was a young boy, I hopped into my father's car. In this text, comma and periods told me where to pause. And often we pause a bit longer at the periods than we do at comma. So I use 2 slashes at periods, and I use single slash at comma. And I use slashes to indicate pauses in this chapter. Now question is the punctuation is only guide in forming thought groups? No, there is also grammar. So there are 2 keys to identify thought groups in English: punctuation and grammar. So when you are speaking and you are not looking at punctuation, let grammar guide you. Sentences are made up of grammatical units. Identify those units and you'll know where to pause. Pausing between larger grammatical units create a more natural rhythm and more fluid speech. What kind of grammatical units am I talking about? Well, the first kind is the noun phrases. For example, a beautiful woman. It is not natural to separate these 3 words. They represent a single idea, a thought group. So an article, adjective, and a noun must be pronounced in one breath. Noun phrases can be subject of a sentence. Now in this example, a beautiful woman entered the room. In the first example, a single noun phrase is our subject, a beautiful woman. So if we have to pause in this sentence, we are going to pause after the subject and before the predicate. Now look at the second example. A beautiful woman and her little dog entered the room. But in this sentence, the subject is a bit longer. Again, grammar is a guide, and we are dealing with a compound subject, meaning there is 2. So it is possible to pause after a woman and before dog. Verb phrases are another kind of grammatical unit. For example, ran blissfully. We do not separate a verb from an adverb. Climbed tall trees. We do not separate a verb from object. Had been dancing. And it is also not natural to separate an auxiliary verb from the main verb. Here are 2 more grammatical units. Prepositional phrases, for example, with my friends, and clauses. The first example for a clause is an adverb clause, an adverb clause of time. When I was a boy, I leaped over fences. The boy who was no older than 6 or 7, leaped over a fence. In this sentence, too, we have adjective clause, who is not older than 6 or 7, leaped over fence. Again, these grammatical unit represents the ideas. We don't want to break up these ideas. Although grammar is a guide, it doesn't mean that every sentence have to be broken up in a grammatical units. We do not break up short sentences. For example, I ran, who jumped, did you dance? It's Mythica's composition. It would not be natural to pause in the short statements. We only pause at very end before the next statement. Punctuation and grammar are your guides. But in general, you don't want to simply break up the words that form a single idea. And if you need to speak slower for your listeners for any reason, break the sentence into shorter thought groups. Read the statement to yourself and decide where to pause. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. I'll read as follows. When I was mother, I tripped over twice on the floor and dropped my children in my arms. Did you get right? Now it is also possible to pause after toys and after children. As I stated before, if you need to speak slower for any reason, you'll break the long sentences into shorter thought groups. So the alternative reading for the statement is, when I was mother, I tripped over toys on the floor and dropped my children in my arms. Now try this one. I'll give you a few seconds for that and request you to post your answers in the comment box. Now this one. Use slashes to indicate your poses. Let's practice listening for and observing thought groups in action. Here is an expert of TED Talk by the writer Chimamanda Adichie entitled The Danger of a Single Story. And this is an excellent example of how a speaker chooses her thought group boundaries to accomplish specific communicative goals. As mentioned earlier, public speaking is a context in which appropriate thoughtful use of thought groups improve your intelligibility to a greater extent. So watch this, and there is a following exercise to do it. You need to find out the thought groups used in the video.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer, and when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow, they ate apples, and they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria, I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes, and we never talked about the weather because there was no need to.
Now find out the thought groups in this paragraph and also mention their names. Now here is your guide. If you got right, then it's okay, you can move on. If you didn't get right, go back to the video and do it again.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today